Welcome back and thank you for staying with KTN Prime. Now let's talk about reproductive health care and where we are at in the country. Joining me for this particular conversation next to me is Dr. Kireki Omanwa, who is the president of COGS, which is the Kenya Obstetrical Gynecological Society. And next to him we have Kenneth Juma, senior researcher officer, APHRC, which is the African Population and Health Research Center. Good evening, gentlemen. Karibuni sana.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting us to the studio today.
All right. Before we even get to the nitty-gritties, perhaps, Dr. we can start with you. Let's have an overview. Where are we at in terms of reproductive healthcare policies?
Thank you. First of all, thank you for inviting us to the studio today. And I know we are going to talk about something slightly different, but still within the purview of the Kenyan Obstetrical and Gynecological Society, because it's part of reproductive health. Reproductive health is quite wide and has several layers. So when you talk about reproductive health, we are talking about young ladies from the age of, 13, 14, 15. And by the way, we have a big problem with teenage pregnancy. We have over 200,000 teenage pregnancies in a year. So that is a huge number as well. So that points out to the issue that we have a problem either with the sexual education or the access to this education, or maybe even the quality of this education that these young ladies are getting. So we come across from adolescents, of course, we come to preconception. These ladies who are trying to get pregnant, do they get the proper advice? Do they get the proper care? Then the ones who are expectant, and that is where we have a big problem. Now, as they are expectant, are they getting the quality of care as per WHO guidelines? Because the expectant mothers, there is a guideline, there is a suggestion by WHO that every pregnant mother should have at least 8 contacts with a healthcare, provider, a doctor, midwife, and so on. Sometimes we see patients who come to deliver 34, 35 weeks, have never been seen by anybody. They have no idea about their blood group. They have never checked their HIV status, have never checked, their hemoglobin levels, and so on. So it becomes very difficult and sometimes very complicated to take care of these mothers. Now, during pregnancy and during delivery, that is where we also have a very big problem. We talk about the big five, which are known. Kenya is known for the big five, the lion, the rhino, and so on. In obstetrics, we also have the big five. We have postpartum hemorrhage, we have preeclampsia, we have sepsis, we have post-abortion complications, and then we also have obstructed labor. After delivery, now, these mothers, of course, should have continuous care. And then now, once they have finished their deliveries, we go now into the other stage where they are bringing up these children and so on. There are also gynecological problems. We have cervical cancer, we have breast cancer, and so on. And unfortunately, we are in that sphere where cervical cancer is one of the biggest killers of women in this country. And then now after that, we come to something which we rarely talk about because we have been convinced that that does not affect African women. The menopause. We rarely hear people talking about menopause. Even my colleagues don't talk about menopause a lot. I think because we have been convinced in a way that that doesn't affect African women, but it is a problem, it does. And then in between, you also have other problems. You have endometriosis, we have fibroids, we have polycystic ovarian syndrome, and so on and so forth. So it is a wide spectrum, very many layers, and I'm glad that we do have guidelines on what to do. But then the big question sometimes is, most of the time we have these guidelines, but do we effect them, or they just lie in the shelves somewhere and they don't, they are not used the way they are supposed to be used?
All right, and we get to those guidelines shortly, but coming to you, Kenneth, I mean, you recently, that is your organization, APHRC, together with the Ministry of Health, released a report. And I don't want to say it's a damning report, but for some, those statistics are quite worrying. To those of our viewers who do not know, in 2023, there were an estimated 2.8 million pregnancies in Kenya. 1.4 were unintended, and 792,000 thereabout ended in induced abortions. Before we even get to the nitty-gritties, the word abortion in our society is shunned upon.
Absolutely.
So for this report to come, perhaps, is there a reason behind it?
Yeah, so thank you very much, Ashley. At APHRC, really we pride ourselves at having a track record in generating evidence. And this is not just evidence, but policy-relevant evidence, evidence that could be used to inform effective policies, to address some of the very pressing issues that I think Daktari has very articulately listed. Sometimes policy actors are hamstrung in decision-making because they do not have the latest updated quality evidence that they could use to inform decisions around how best to invest in intervention. So, at APHRC, that's what we do best, generating evidence and really facilitating the use of this evidence by policy actors to use them in decision-making, including even budget processes, policies and programs, and even laws. Yeah, so that's the main reason why we generate evidence.
Okay, so tell us more about these findings.
Okay, so the study really, and happy that you already have sort of outlined some of the main figures. The truth is that the study was big. We went to all the 47 counties in Kenya, and the goal was to estimate the total number of induced abortions that occur in Kenya. And we do not end there. We also try to estimate the severity of complications that result from abortion experiences and whether these women sought care or not. And then we also go further to examine the state of our health system and health facilities as to how ready they are to offer post-abortion care, which is a legal service that is should be given to every woman who has lost a pregnancy. So again, we try to examine the status of our health facilities as to how ready they are to offer this service in a quality manner, safe manner, and yeah.
All right, Dr. coming to you, before we even get to more, what does induced abortions mean?
Thank you. The word abortion, the term abortion, is usually used interchangeably with his miscarriage. When we talk about abortion, it is where there is a pregnancy which is okay, which is viable. Pregnancy which is, let's say, 8 weeks, there is a heartbeat and nothing wrong is happening to the baby. The mother is fine, the baby is fine. But this person, for whatever reason, this lady decides, maybe for economic reasons, for whatever reasons it is, that I don't want this baby.
Okay.
This is not the right time for me. Or I have too many children at the moment, and this is not another baby, another mouth which I want to feed. So they go and procure these illegal abortions. Now, we have to be careful when you're talking about that, because we also do induce abortions where the baby is not doing well. Where, for example, the baby has died in the womb. There is no heartbeat, and it can't come out on its own. So we have to induce an abortion.
Okay.
But now when you're talking, I think what you're talking about here is basically, if I heard you right, there are these abortions which are procured illegally, where everything is okay with the mother and with the baby, but for whatever reason, the lady doesn't want to carry that pregnancy.
Okay.
I think that is what we are talking about.
Yeah, so totally, Dr. I do not dispute, only that I think some terminologies normally creates this, sort of reframe the whole topic and make it totally, almost not talked about, not discussed. Yet sometimes I think to address the challenges, you have to, welcome the discussion and objectively discuss as to how to address the challenge of unsafe abortion and abortions in general. Because they do have a root cause, and abortion is an outcome of pregnancy. It's one of the outcomes of pregnancy. A pregnancy can either end in a live birth, stillbirth, abortions or miscarriages. So it's one of the outcomes. But then there's always a context to each abortion, as Dr. has mentioned, and perhaps it would be good to delve deeper into.
So let's talk about this number.
Yes.
The number that we have right now, the 792, these are those who went to a health facility and decided to abort the safe way.
It is 792,000.
Yes.
So not at all, not at all, not at all, Ashley.
That's what I want to understand.
So To start with, as Daktari earlier on, alluded, abortions are legally restricted in the country. So you cannot walk to a health facility, a public health facility, and get an abortion service, a safe abortion service. That is not allowed in the Kenyan legal framework.
It's illegal.
So what do women do? No, it's not illegal.
No, it's legal.
It's not illegal. It's legally restricted. In other words, it's allowed
in some certain circumstances.
A limited set of situations, including, as Dr. said, when the life or health of a woman is at risk, and more lately in 2019 through a High Court ruling, when a woman probably has undergone sexual gender-based violence, rape, for instance, then of course they're entitled to seek a safe abortion. So because public facilities do not offer abortions, okay, because they are restricted by the law, what then women do, what they resort to do, is to seek abortion in whatever means that they can, go around the bush, go to a backdoor clinic, be exploited by other actors in the space, and the resulting consequence is complications that then our law allows all these women to be treated in the public and private health facilities. So post-abortion care is legal. In summary, what the law allows is that go and do whatever you want to do, and then come here, we will treat you if you're lucky enough not to die.
Okay, Dr. from what he's saying, I mean, if there is post-abortion care,
yes,
and abortion is legally constricted, yeah, that's the right word.
Yes.
For me, it doesn't add up.
It doesn't
Kindly
add up.
break it down for me.
Okay, let me put it this way. Sometimes you have patients who come to hospital and they have preeclampsia, for example.
Okay.
And preeclampsia is where the blood pressure during pregnancy is very high. And we try to control this blood pressure by using multiple drugs, and it doesn't work. And when we examine this patient, you find that the baby is basically very small, or sometimes even the baby is dead in the womb. So what do? We have to give her medications in order for that baby to come out. Now, what my colleague is saying is that, look, because I am in a condition, a woman A is in a condition whereby she doesn't want to carry this baby for whatever reason. It can be incest, it can be rape, or it can be, oops, it happened. I was not ready for this baby. And I think it's Article 26, one of the Constitution, which says that abortion is allowed on condition that the health of the mother or the baby, or even both of them, is under threat. And then this one has to be qualified by a healthcare professional. So these are the conditions.
Okay.
Now, this Mrs. A does not fulfill these conditions at all. So what does she do? That is what my colleague here said. They go off to the funny places, and some of the things that they use for inducing these abortions are just out of this world.
Okay.
They use medications over the counter, and we know that there is a huge loophole in the pharmaceutical industry. You can buy practically everything over the counter. They use soap sometimes. I don't know what kind of soap, but they say, yes, soap. Wanasema tulikuja tukatumia sabuni, and then something happens. I think what they try to do is for that soap to do what? To induce contractions or diarrhea, and because of diarrhea you lose electrolytes. When you lose electrolytes, you start having contractions, and that comes out.
Okay.
It goes even further. They use even hangers. You know, how they do it, I have no idea. And I would like to focus on what he was saying. If you make it, if you don't die. 1.4%, is it 1.4%?
1.4, yeah.
1.4% of those women actually have life-threatening complications. And what are these life-threatening complications? First of all, there is bleeding, excessive bleeding, massive bleeding. Number two, again, depending on what they've used. Number two, sometimes we see patients who have the uteruses, which are perforated, and not only the uterus. Sometimes they come to hospital with their entrails, streaming out of the vagina. You see the intestines, coming out, and so on. As if that is not enough. Later on, they may have sepsis, and sepsis. Sometimes they stay at home, they don't do anything, and they hope that these problems will go away, but they don't go away. By the time they come to hospital, it is too late. We have seen patients who come and they die at the accident and emergency department. We had a case talking about women who are married. This lady came, some cases you just remember, you can't forget. She came from, I can't remember whether it was Meru or Embu, whatever it was. She was married. She had 3 children, well educated. So exactly, sort of classic of what those statistics, sort of confirm. Married, 3 children, educated, I think a secondary school teacher. I don't know whether she had an affair or not, but she went and procured this abortion illegally. Then things went south. She did not tell the husband that what she had done. Yep. So she went to hospital. She was taken to one of the hospitals, and of course, unfortunately, in one of those hospitals, in that hospital, they did not have ICU. She was in raging sepsis, temperature, I think it was 40 degrees and whatever. So her body has started shutting down. So what do? Put her in an ambulance straight to Nairobi. Comes to Nairobi, but that fever has been raging for a couple of days. Okay. So by the time she comes, even getting a vein was a challenge because everything was now collapsing. And unfortunately, we lost her at the accident and emergency.
Quite unfortunate.
Very unfortunate. That notwithstanding, there's a time I was on call, and in one of the wards, we had 5 women. 5 women. All of them were married. All of them had children, 2, 3, 4 children. All of them had got pregnant. All of them had procured abortions illegally, and all of them had complicated. But now that is, I think, the 16.4%, whereby you have life-threatening.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then, so it is exactly what he's saying. Yes, whatever you do out there, that is, it's not fine, but you have done it. But when you come to hospital, we have a responsibility and obligation to make sure, to try as much as possible that we help you and that you go home.
Okay, from what Dr. has said, from the experiences that he's just narrated, and of course from what you've heard from women out there while conducting this particular research, what have you gathered in terms of the gaps in our policies? Because you say it is policy relevant evidence that is needed. What have you gathered? So,
first of all, I think you should take a moment to allow what Dr. has said to sink in.
Okay.
It is, those narratives that actually, are behind the figures that we've reported. Sometimes, because of abortion being, as it is, very sensitive, some of these conversations are not had in a way that can lead to actions, towards preventing and protecting the lives of women and girls. So, in terms of really what to...
And unborn babies as well.
And of course, yeah. So, in terms of what Dr. has said as to now how do we resolve this situation from our data, the fact is that the law as it is does not prevent abortions. And that is not only in Kenya, but it's now a fact known globally that using the instrument of the law to try and regulate abortions does not work. What it does is that, I'll give you an example. We did the same study in 2012. So 2012, the numbers were about 460 something thousand. So the numbers have doubled over the last 10 or so years, meaning that the law as it is does not prevent abortions, but rather what does it do? It pushes a lot of women towards those unsafe and crude methods of abortion that are very harmful. And if they're lucky enough not to die, then they live with permanent complications that sometimes are very disabling. So our call to action really is to discuss the legal reforms that we need in this country. That how do we begin protecting the girls as soon as they hit puberty? What amount of education and information do we give them at that age that is able to allow them navigate the challenges of adolescence and puberty and young adulthood safely, empowered, resisting sexual advances from that they do not desire, and sort of emerging out of youthhood, alive and well? Because if you keep saying, the future belongs to the youth, but if the youth get to that future when they're not healthy or economically constructive, then again, we are not building a future for these young people that are currently growing. So our data really is affirmative in the sense that we need to discuss the legal reforms that are aimed at protecting girls and women from these unsafe methods of abortion. But apart from that, also expanding access to very effective modern contraceptives to prevent the unintended pregnancies in the first place. I always say this, that the cause of abortion is unintended pregnancies. Okay, so the occurrence of an unintended pregnancy that is either mistimed, unplanned, not required at that time is what results in abortion. However, the driver of unsafe abortion is our legal framework that then constrict the environment and force these women to do whatever they want, because then there's care for them.
I'm just
after
curious,
that is done. Yes.
from the research from those that you've interacted, and in general looking at our society, do you think we're ready to have that conversation of abortion?
So until we value the lives of women and girls, if we do not value the women and the lives of women and girls, then we can say, fine, let's postpone this conversation to another 10 years. But if we value the lives of women and girls, and actually, there's enough evidence and data on what can be done that is effective at changing the situation. Other countries that have reformed their laws to really focus on protecting the women and girls, they did not see an increase in the number of abortions. The well-being, health and well-being of the women really was improved rather than the numbers of abortion increasing. A woman who has decided to have an abortion will have it no matter what.
Yeah.
Even if the military was surrounding this room and there's a lady who wants to have an abortion, they will
always find a way.
They will find a way. So no matter how much restrictive restrictive laws we build and enforce, it will not regulate the number of abortions. However, if we focus on those interventions that are known to be working, legal reforms, ensuring that they have access to information and services, then we have a chance at addressing this menace of unsafe abortions.
All right.
Yeah.
We will talk about those legal reforms shortly, but he talked about the issue of contraceptives.
Yes.
This study says that only 1 in 3 women were using contraceptives methods and when they became pregnant. That is around 34%. And he equally it says that using 62% were using medication abortion. 42% feared contraceptives methods for fear of side effects. Side effects. Because it's gotten to a point where contraceptives affect women differently.
Correct.
How do we... Dr. you're already laughing as you know my question. How do we remedy that?
Not really, but let me hear your question.
How do we remedy that? Because you see, for example, let's use me.
Yes.
I'm a woman. So let's say I use contraceptives, but these contraceptives don't work for me.
They don't work for you.
What is my option?
Actually, we have very many options.
Okay.
We have very many options. And then the fact that we are dealing with ladies are complicated, and that is why you can't have one size fits all.
Okay.
Different women will respond to different contraceptives differently. When you talk about contraceptives, basically what you're talking about, just from the word itself, it's against, conception.
Yeah.
Now, there are different methods, starting from the so-called natural methods, where you monitor, the vaginal discharge in the vagina, and then, when that discharge is slippery and clear and whatever, you don't have sex.
Okay.
And 2 other methods where you have what you call coitus interrupters and so on. Those methods fail 98 or 99% of the time.
Okay.
So you can't even call them methods of contraception.
They're not effective.
They are not effective. Yeah. However, there are some areas, there are some people who sort of push this narrative that actually these are methods which can be used. If a patient has a cold, for example, has a small infection which will affect the temperature in her body, those methods are going to fail. Now, when you talk about contraception now, these are the methods. You have hormonal, you have non-hormonal, you have long-acting, and you have permanent methods and so on.
Yeah.
Now, the purpose of contraception, and let's just even talk about hormonal contraception, because these ones are the ones that women fear that they have, side effects. We have very many of them. We have tablets, for example, which are the most common. And by the way, every day about 200 million women take a form of contraception. Is that a big number? No, it is not. It should be a little bit higher. Look at what we have there. It's only 33%. What happens to these other 60-something percent? So there is a gap. So we have tablets, we have injections, we have coils, we have patches, we have rings, and so on and so forth. Now, because some women are not very systematic, that, for example, for the tablets, they have to be used every day at a certain time. Some women say, mimi sina yo kichwa ya kufanya hivyo. So for them, using tablets is going to be a challenge. Okay. So tablets is not for them. They may want something, for example, like an injection. very, very convenient. Just one injection a month or sometimes every 3 months. One injection, you forget about it. But the only problem is that some of these, like for example, the injection, the side effects are that, number one, there can be intermenstrual bleeding, which can be a little bit awkward. Number two, gaining of weight, that can also be a challenge. Number three, some of them have reported headaches, which can be intractable. And then number four, libido collapses completely. So, but we need to talk to these patients before we say, you know what, these are the ones which are available. And again, there's something else which is very important. Cost is very, very important. So we may say this is the best for you, but you will not be able to afford it.
Okay.
We have an implant, for example, very, very convenient, put on the arm here, and it is left there for 3 years, 4 years. Again, very good. The only thing again is that there is that intermenstrual bleeding. It affects a bit of libido as well. But if a patient doesn't feel comfortable with that, we remove it.
Okay.
The injection, unfortunately, we have to leave it there until it is completely metabolized by the body. The tablets you can stop. The patches you can remove. You know, the ring, because there's a ring which you can insert in the vagina, you can also remove it. Very convenient to insert it once every 3 weeks. We have female condoms. Horrible, because they're very clumsy to use, and you have to insert it into the vagina first and so on. And I don't think in the heat of the moment you'll be thinking about, let me insert my female condom kwanza, and then we start this thing. You don't do that. It is easier. It is easier for the men, and so on. Now, when you talk about other complications, for example, when you talk about permanent methods of contraception, we also do that. We also do what we call bilateral tubal ligation, where we divide the tubes, the fallopian tubes, such that now the sperm cannot pass through, the egg also cannot, so they can't meet. Okay. However, when we do that, we warn the patient that, you know, if we do this, chances of you getting pregnant naturally are practically zero.
Okay. All right, we want to take a short break. When we come back, of course, we'll be talking about the legal reforms that are needed, and also we'll be looking at our post-abortion care. How equipped are our health facilities? After the break.